Letitia, baby, it is over. And guess what? They're still coming for you on that mortgage fraud stuff. Ed Martin taking a photo outside the brownstone today, tweeting it with a big giant smile. He's the DOJ investigator looking into just exactly what went down with some of those properties. Anyway, we're talking about a $500 million lien basically on Donald Trump that she had gotten in there along with the judge, Arthur Engoron, or however the heck you say the guy's name, whatever you want to call him. I'll tell you, he's no good. He's no good because this was so perverse what they did. And guess what else? It was a total violation of the president's Eighth Amendment rights. Yeah, there's this little thing called the Eighth Amendment because, you know, when we were trying to free ourselves from Great Britain back in the day, we didn't like what the royals would do when they would decide to dictate everything and they could take somebody down just because they didn't like your opinions and they could make life really difficult vis-a-vis the fines, etc. That's what Letitia James was doing, for goodness sakes. That $500 million penalty against the former, now president of the United States is gone, and she's kind of suffering a big setback. I mean, this is fantastic. For a woman who was just nonstop, right, out for blood, and then some, who made it her mission every day to come into work and to campaign on getting Donald Trump. This is what you call justice.
He's called me venomous.
We will fight back to your attempt to bring Trumpism to New York City.
He's called me disgraceful.
Of the fact that they stole the Supreme Court seat. An illegitimate president and an illegitimate member of the United States Supreme Court.
He's called me radical.
Listen, yes. We know he's crazy. Yes. We know he doesn't have a sound mind. Yes. We know he's out of control. Yes. We know he's losing it. We know his days are numbered and we will come together.
He's called me a racist.
We've got to stand up to an administration which is too male, too pale, and too stale. Too male, too pale, and too stale. Too male.
That one got me. Okay.
Too stale.
I just gotta say, this is a great moment in time. And I wanted to, just jog your memory so that you know what he was up against. A political animal who was quite willing to take everything he owned. In fact, she told ABC News. You remember them? Oh, they had to pay a fine to the tune of, $16 million to the president. They're now under investigation for FCC violations. And Bob Iger and the president of ABC News and the rest of them, all in all kinds of trouble. But anyway, they were kind of taking Letitia's side, so it seemed. I mean, anybody, in the media was doing this. They were all on her side, despite the fact that, she was so over her skis in terms of the actual law. She wanted to actually take Trump Tower. Let me remind you.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
Okay. Well, you can't actually do that. Again, Letitia, because there is this thing called the Eighth Amendment, which if you paid attention in law school instead of politicking all the time, maybe you'd actually know about. Yeah, the Eighth Amendment that doesn't allow you to just improperly go after people for these reasons. This is what it came down to. Total violation of the Eighth Amendment. You had a 5-member panel. This is a picture coming to us courtesy of Fox, all upholding findings that Trump and his company were liable, affirming that James acted within her authority. And that's vis-a-vis them saying, well, he inflated the square footage, et cetera. We're going to get to that in a second because the fraud part, that still stands. And he's appealing that. And he's also, by the way, his DOJ is going after Letitia James for a violation of his civil rights, as well, by the way, her having committed some kind of fraud herself, because it seems that she did something, allegedly, that may have been far worse than anything she's trying to indicate he may have done. Okay, because he inflated the square footage on something, which again, you can't do, but would it ever, for goodness sakes, warrant the taking away of his property, not allowing, him to continue accumulating. I mean, $500 million, guys, that's what you came up with? Come on. So that gets at Eighth Amendment rights, right? Because you can't have excessive fines. For example, you cannot have the government come in and disproportionately say, okay, we're going to fine you, we're going to fine you, we're going to fine you with these huge penalties that have no relation to what actually may or may not have been done. For example, you can't have cruel and unusual punishments. I mean, this was $500 million. I mean, and it would have been even bigger by the time all the interest had accumulated. This was massive and it was unacceptable. And the judges knew it at the time. I couldn't believe it took so long. That's the one thing that shocked me. I mean, they knew from the very beginning. And by the way, the media knew. The media knows. And Letitia does not have a lot of friends right now. I mean, the media had already started to turn on her. They said this was of her own making because everybody was like, what the heck is this case? And you're bragging about this when it actually is just such a violation of people's rights, for goodness sakes, lady, which is what they tried to tell her. I mean, hey, Tishy, honey, you have no victim in this case. Remember when we listened to the arguments? This is Judith Vale speaking on behalf of Letitia James, because again, when you go to the appellate court, you need smarter people arguing these cases, not Letitia James, who's just out for political blood. Watch.
May it please the court, Judith Vale for the New York Attorney General's office. All of the defendants repeatedly violated... Ms.
Vale, can you identify any previous case in which the Attorney General sued under Executive Law 6312 to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners, where the supposed victim had the ability and legal obligation to discover the allegedly misrepresented matters by conducting its own due diligence, where the supposed wrongdoer advised the supposed victim through written disclaimers to conduct its own due diligence and to draw its own conclusions, where the alleged misrepresentation almost entirely concerned inherently subjective valuations of properties and businesses.
Yes.
And where the victim never complained about any fraud in the transactional losses from it. Because I've gone through the cases which you've cited, and all of them always involved the consumer protection aspect. It involved protection of the market.
Several responses.
And I want to add to his question, and little to no impact on the public marketplace.
Boom! Okay, that's when we all knew. And then we've been sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Now, normally these things take like 30 days. So it should have happened really quickly. And yet it took over 300 days. So what's that about? Apparently there was some debate about whether or not they, were going to stick with the fraud charges, et cetera. But, they made the decision. They concluded that whatever he may or may not have done on that front, it didn't warrant the kind of fraud fine that the judge and Letitia came up with. That was just bonkers, and that was a violation of the Eighth Amendment. But again, they never had a case, ever. And that was super evident from the very beginning.
You're pointing to Ernst & Young, you're pointing to First American. Ernst & Young, you're dealing with the collapse of Lehman Brothers. First American, you're dealing with an action brought against an appraiser who overvalued properties at the behest of a lender perpetrating a scheme to induce unsophisticated consumers into taking out home loans that they could not afford. It hardly seems that justifies bringing an action to protect Deutsche Bank against President Trump, which is what you have here. I mean, you've got two really sophisticated parties in which no one lost any money. And that was the point of my initial question. Every case that you cite involved where there was damage to consumers, damage to the marketplace. You've got a scheme to get unsophisticated consumers to take out home loans. You got a collapse of Lehman Brothers. You don't have anything like that here.
Well, first of all, Your Honor, the statute doesn't require that whatsoever for liability. And the statute is written broadly because the legislature wants the Attorney General to go in and stop fraud and illegality.
Counsel, I think you hear underneath all these
counsel, I think you're over your skis. Bottom line here, we do have Eighth Amendment rights. Now, in terms of the fraud aspect, one of the challenging parts about all this, right? You can't you can't say, my apartment is 3,000 square feet when it's really 1,000 square feet, right? And so that's part of the issue that's come up. Again, does the Does the punishment fit the crime? Absolutely not, which is why you get back to the 8th Amendment and the violation there. So I'm not saying for any reason that somebody should inflate or exaggerate or any of that. However, you can't justify what she did. I mean, that is just sort of, it's kind of a slap on the wrist because there weren't any victims. Like, that's what the judges kept saying. There aren't any victims in this case. And so, not that it makes it right, but typically you kind of got to have a victim, especially if it's going to be a case of that magnitude. And if you're talking about those kinds of fines and putting people through that kind of torment, which, you know, frankly, he and his family were put through HELL and back, right? Because of Letitia James and too male, too pale, too stale and the whole bit, right? This suddenly became just go get Trump instead of rooted in anything really legal or scholarly. So this has been a wild case from the get-go. I'm also struck by the fact that you had a Letitia James, Attorney General of the state of New York, trying to intervene and say, well, I think Mar-a-Lago is worth this. He thinks it's worth that. So he's inflating it. But isn't it up to Deutsche Bank, the actual bank that makes the financial decision to lend him the money, what they think it's worth? Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are responsible, right? And as long as you're going to go after him on that front, then maybe you should be going after Letitia. Maybe you should be going after Deutsche Bank too, because Deutsche Bank was the one who said, hey, you know what, we'll take this. We'll take this all day long. They even said they would take it again because it was a great deal and everybody made money. God forbid the Democrats ever let you make money. Again, I'm not condoning, you know, the inflating property values or anything like that, but I'm also going to tell you, if Letitia James is telling you Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million, you got bigger problems, all right? Much, much bigger problems. And that's the state meddling in private enterprise, which all of those judges were like, whoa, this is not good. So what happens now? Where does it go next? Listen, she's still in a lot of trouble, and we'll talk about that. But now, because they're upholding this fraud case, he's appealing that one. So he's got a victory on the financial front. That is some validation, some legal validation as well, right? Because she was violating his 8th Amendment. So that's a big, big deal. And the New York Times even had to admit that. I love this, reading, quote, a New York appeals court on Thursday threw out a $500 million judgment against President Trump, eliminating the enormous financial penalty. And then they had to write, well, declining to overturn the fraud case against him. So again, that's what's going to go on to another appellate court there. And what I think is kind of the sweet justice in all this is that this was her career-defining victory, right? She was like, I got him for $500 million. It's like a threat to anyone who ever wants to run for president and you don't happen to be on, you know, that side's team. Who the heck wants to be in politics if that's what you're up against? I mean, these people, these DAs, these AGs, they tend to be very political, and it's a very, very gross distortion of what we should be. But it's satisfying, right? When the law comes back and the law makes the right decision. In the case of this one, you have an 8th Amendment backing you up. You can't have cruel and unusual punishments. You can't have excessive fines. This was totally an excessive fine. It was totally a cruel and unusual punishment because it just didn't merit anything like this. You had no victims, as the judge said, not to mention, it was Deutsche Bank's decision to take this on. So, you know, is the state going to get in the way of that? I don't think so. That's not the kind of country we live in. Granted, again, I'm not suggesting for 2 seconds that you can lie on anything or inflate on anything, but I would say that the onus is also on Deutsche Bank or whatever bank is doing the lending to make sure that they're okay with something, because if push comes to shove, if he didn't pay the bill, Deutsche Bank would have been in there saying, hey, we need this, that, and the other. We want to make sure that we can get something out of Mar-a-Lago. So a huge, huge victory for Trump and his family today. And certainly it's good to have this one off his shoulders. What happens next? He takes this to the appellate court. Again, it's going to go up the food chain because he does not want to go down as having been convicted of fraud. He does get some support here in that you know how viciously political she is, to the point where, and also the judge. I mean, what is the judge thinking? I'd like to see his you-know-what get sued as well, because for someone like Arthur Engoron, I never say it right, and you know what? I don't even care. Whatever, E-N-D-O-G. Arthur, let's just call him Judge Arthur. What a vindictive, terrible person he is to completely ignore the Constitution. What kind of judges do we have? And so, yes, I'm happy that at the appellate court there's some relief. It should have happened sooner. There was a lot of speculation that Kathy Hochul had her hand in there. There was speculation about one judge in particular that was put there by Kathy Hochul, and the White House had indicated that Kathy was sort of holding this over his head. That was all rumored because Kathy's saying, no, I would never do that, etc. But you had to wonder, why was it taking so long? If it normally takes 30 days, why did this take more than 300? At least we have some resolution, however, now. And I'll tell you, Letitia James is not out of trouble. Letitia James could very well be looking at 30 years in the slammer for mortgage fraud herself, like the real kind of mortgage fraud, okay? The kind of mortgage fraud that actually puts taxpayers at risk because she's involving taxpayer funds. And she's also looking at a DOJ investigation out of New York regarding her alleged violation of Donald Trump's civil rights. Ed Martin is the guy that was appointed by Pam Bondi. Okay, so Ed Martin is doing the investigation, and he's poking around all kinds of places, including her backyard. I mean, not to be intimidated or anything, right? You know, I don't know, but when the feds are showing up at your doorstep, gosh, Letitia, wasn't that what you were trying to do at Trump Tower, you know, when you wanted to have to confiscate all of his assets? Weren't you doing that actually at his golf course too? Well, now Ed Martin's giving you a little bit of payback. This is the DOJ investigator looking into one Letitia James after Bill Pulte over at the federal housing thing said, you know what? I think that this woman might have committed mortgage fraud, because why did she say on her documentation when she applied for a mortgage in Virginia that this was her primary residence? It's a fair question, and Ed is trying to find out. I want to show you this video that was taken by somebody on the street as he moseyed up. He's looking like Columbo there in the trench coat with a colleague to take a good hard look at the stoop and see how many floors are actually in that brownstone, because apparently she reported 4, but it's really 5, and that has something to do with the kind of rate you get on what you know, the mortgage. Watch.
I'm just sure there's like the Pratt building. Is there
You want me to tell you how to access my...
No, I'm just asking. I'm interested, because usually houses like this.
Tell me why you're here.
We're interested in the houses.
You're not interested in the houses. We know who lives here.
Is this like Second Empire?
It's just a track house. That's what all of these things are.
I know, but when was it built, do you think?
They were built before 1899.
Oh, so, okay.
Why are you being so disingenuous about what you're here for? You're not here about the houses. You're here because of who lives here. It's my neighborhood. It's my block. I have a right to know what you guys look like your official capacity.
I'm just happy to be on a block looking at a house.
That's not true. Why won't you be honest?
No, he is happy.
Well, why won't you be honest with me about what you're doing? You are acting suspicious on my block in front of my neighborhood.
I'm just looking.
And you're not telling me what you're doing. That's not true.
Interesting houses. It's an important house. Thank you. Have a good
It's
day.
hard to hear.
Just like every other track house on this block that was built by developers.
Right, they're beautiful. Beautiful neighborhood.
Thank you.
I mean, do you guys call this a stoop?
What do you think?
I don't know. Is this a stoop? We didn't have stoops where I was growing up. Is this a stoop?
I want to know what you're doing.
Just checking it out.
You're not.
Okay, so this lady's all upset. You know, why are you on my block? I know what you're doing here. This is Letitia's home, etc. How dare you? And it's like, well, you know, I guess all's fair in love and war. A little bit of payback going on. I would say, though, that, you know, Pulte's onto something. Here he is, I guess it might have been a couple of months ago, on with my friend Maria Bartiromo, my former colleague from both CNBC and Fox Business. And he had a few things to say about Letitia's handling of her mortgage. Watch.
Recommended that the DOJ investigate New York Attorney General Letitia James over alleged mortgage fraud. The AG, Letitia James, has responded. We don't have the video, but here's the quote. "This investigation into me is nothing more than retribution. It's baseless. It has to do with the fact that on a power of attorney, I mistakenly indicated that I was a state of Virginia resident. And prior to that, I indicated to the mortgage broker that, in fact, in bold cap letters, that I am not a resident of Virginia and never will be. They just took the power of attorney, and they're using that as a basis for enforcement of their investigation." Bill, do you know why she said she was a resident of Virginia on the power of attorney, if in fact she wasn't?
Well, I know that we are mortgage experts, and we only refer things that we think are mortgage fraud, and we stand 100% behind the letter. I'll let the letter speak for itself. I do know, and I have seen some reports from that subject, from that subject's criminal defense lawyer, saying certain things. I'll leave it to the DOJ to correct various things. But again, when we see mortgage fraud, we are going to report it. When we see mortgage fraud, we are going to prosecute it within the confines of our duties. And we are not going to be intimidated by a subject's criminal defense lawyer. We are not going to be intimidated by a politician or just because you have an Esquire behind your name. We are not going to be intimidated by people. If we see mortgage fraud, we're going to do something about it. And I think that you're going to see us be taking this on in a big way. Mortgage fraud is a big problem. These companies are safe and sound, but where we see it, we are going to do something about it. And that subject's case is no different.
Well, what are the ramifications of this now that you've referred this for criminality to the DOJ?
Well, I would refer that to the DOJ. Again, as I say, we spend our days, we are mortgage experts. We are not politicians. I view this as an economic job. Obviously, the president can fire me at any time. So I guess in that way. But look, I look at this as an independent agency. We found the mortgage fraud, whether it be that particular subject or other subjects, and we work actively with the DOJ and different law enforcement.
You know what I think is great about this is he won't even say her name, right? That particular subject that none of us really even like to speak of, right? Well, that particular subject is definitely in a whole lot of trouble. Let me show you what Ed Martin put out today. This is great. Again, reminding you that this is the DOJ investigator that has been put in charge of the whole thing. So he's kind of trolling her, right? Like he's really trolling her. And people might be like, well, why is he doing that? But you know what? Let's not forget what Letitia did. Okay, guys? Like, and this is the world, sadly, I guess, in which we live. But he put this picture out. Can you see it? Woo! Good morning, America. How are you? Now, you know what's funny? This came right before the news. So I think he had kind of a heads up. I think he knew that this was coming and that they were about to dismiss the $500 million penalty. And so then he put this one out. Thomas Brennan, thank you for your generosity. Great to have everybody here. I'm looking at all your comments live. And James Vickery, thank you so much. It is a wonderful day, right? You know, listen, I flew all the way home from Greece yesterday, okay? I was in the air for 11 hours. I got home at like 1:30 in the morning. And of course, I go through the news before I go to bed every night. What are we going to lead with? And I had a bunch of stories I wanted to talk to you guys about. And even this morning, I got up extra early, because I'm still on, some other time schedule. And guess what? This thing hit. And I called David, who works on my team, and he didn't even know about it yet. No, I mean, like this, we had it fresh, hot off the presses. Unfortunately, there's some production that goes into doing this, so I couldn't join you right away. It took me like an hour and a half or so, but here I am. And wow, so James, thank you for that. And peace of my mind, good to see you back here. And I really, Thomas, thank you as well. Thomas Bryant, he said it's amazing that New Yorkers aren't complaining about the $10 million in tax money. Of course, but you know what, Thomas? They are. They're just not being heard. I have showed you guys some polls that suggest Letitia actually isn't going to get elected again. I realize they like her in New York City. New York City is its own special kind of place. I know, I lived there way too long. I thank the Lord every day that I no longer have to live in New York City, but in New York City, she has a base of support. You go outside in New York City and no one likes her. You go up to say, the Buffalo area where my husband's from, you see a lot of Trump signs, and I'll tell you one thing, no one likes her. No one likes her, and her polls are actually showing a lot of weakness. And I don't think people are going to like the idea that she's taking taxpayer dollars to pay the likes of Abby Lowell, the fancy schmancy Hunter Biden attorney. Yeah, he's the guy that represented Hunter on the laptop. So he's charging a pretty penny, and she's got $10 million for it. Well, the GOP in New York is like, no way. And I'll tell you, the Democrats are struggling. New study out that the New York Times even reported on yesterday showing that nobody's actually registering to vote as a Democrat anymore. I mean, they got a 28% approval rating. Even CNN admits their brand is in the garbage, and nobody's registering to be a Republican. Forgive me, a Democrat. They're all registering, young people, to be Republicans. So, the Dems have a problem, and I think Letitia has a problem. I think people are going to be furious that she is using their hard-earned money to fight this thing because she's the political animal that she is, and she just wants to keep on fighting to try and raise her profile. But she's going to raise her profile right out of her job as AG. Meanwhile, not to mention, she is looking at Ed Martin's penalties there with possible mortgage fraud. I mean, that's really, really pretty bad. And what's being alleged is really, really pretty serious. But she's not the only one. I mean, look at all the people that are getting hit with the mortgage fraud thing. It's like, wowsy, guys. I mean, Adam Schiff, Mr. Schiff show, he's back in action. I mean, he's in a ton of trouble right now because it looks like he had a home in Maryland that he declared as his primary residence while he was the representative to California. So now how does that make sense? It doesn't. There's no way that one makes sense. So, the Schiff is sort of hitting the fan, as we like to say. This is something that came out as well vis-a-vis Adam Schiff. I'm looking at sort of just some FBI documents suggesting that he really did have quite a big role in the whole Russia thing, as we already knew, right? And so that's coming to light. James Marino, thank you for the generosity. News reports allege DNC and Dems have very little money in the bank. Yeah, and I mean, why? Why would you contribute to them? I mean, nobody likes the Dems right now, and they feel betrayed by them. I mean, this Russia thing is a great example, right? With Adam Schiff and his Schiff show on steroids now getting exposed for the dramatic film event that it really was. I believe he wanted to be a film producer, so he missed his calling, or an actor or something, right? So he has like Hollywood in his blood, and he's making this stuff up out of thin air, and that's coming back to haunt him. You saw what Tulsi did yesterday. She's taken away security clearances right after left for all of these people that were involved in this Russia thing that was believed to have been generated out of Barack Obama's grand vision, along with all the people around him. So this is a problem, okay? And Adam Schiff could be going down for mortgage fraud, along with this one other lady, okay? I want to get to her in a second because there's a woman that you've probably never heard of, Ms. Cook. I think it's Laura Cook, who's kind of cooked, shall we say, on the Federal Reserve Board. You know that Donald Trump's not too happy with the Fed. He wants lower interest rates. There is an argument. It's an interesting one. We've talked about it at 76 Research. My company, by the way, go to 76 Research, use code word dollar. It's important to be investing right now. Use dollar. It's my gift to you, just $1 a month for the first 2 months. If you don't like it, you can cancel. It goes to $9.95 thereafter. But we've talked a lot about this. I mean, can you live in a world where you have these lower rates and still low inflation? And the short answer is yes. And you can read all about it again at 76research.com. I'm going to put it in the show links. But this woman is kind of cooked, right? So Donald Trump is out for her right now because apparently, I'm like, what is going on? Like, why is everybody trying to get away with you know what when it comes to their mortgages? I mean, why would you do that? So I know that, compound interest, money, it accumulates over time. And if you can save half a point or whatever she's trying to save, yeah. But I'm sorry, you're on the board of governors for the Federal Reserve. Joe Biden appointed you, Ms. Cook. And now it's coming out that she did what she allegedly did, what Adam Schiff did, and what Letitia James did. And they're finding a whole bunch of them. The whole kit and caboodle is coming forward now. They have like a whole special division just looking into people's mortgage rates. And it's like, what were you guys doing? Like, how does that happen? What world do we live in? Oh, a corrupt one, shall we say, a very, very corrupt one. And it's all coming out. So she's the latest to be targeted. She joins Letitia James and Adam Schiff in that she may have fudged some things in order to try and get a better rate on her mortgage. And you can't do it. You just can't do it. A reminder, if you haven't gone to 76 Research, we're gonna talk about Target coming up, as well as another company that you guys know. The other company would be Cracker Barrel. Did you ever eat there? I love Cracker Barrel. Well, I used to love Cracker Barrel. I don't know if I'm going to love it anymore because they've gotten so woke. They're gonna be the next target. Mark my words. 76research.com for investing ideas, for a handle on the economy, et cetera. I encourage you to do that. Just take a look at some of the success we've had in our recent portfolios. Wow, tech up 84%. One of our tech picks. You've got materials up 55. You get another tech one up 54%. I mean, a lot of good stuff to celebrate right there.